Okay. So, hi everyone. It's Lee Orphan. It's 7 o'clock, so I'll start the presentation now. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll take, well, first of all, I'm Lee Orphan. I'm a tour leader with Bicycle Breeze, and joining me is my wife, Beth. She co-leads the tours with me. And today we'll be doing a 20-minute presentation, just going over two of the bike tours that Beth and I are leading in January and February this coming winter. And we'll set aside 20 minutes for some Q's and A's at the end. And with that, I'll just close that window and begin the presentation. So Beth and I are both self-professed Cuba junkies. We've traveled there many times over the years. We've done several bike tours with Bicycle Breeze and other tours where we've been self-supported or just gone to a resort and cycled in the countryside. We love Cuba and we love their people. And we also find the varied landscapes cycling around Cuba just amazing. So we can see anything from beaches to mountains to rolling countryside. And the cycling is excellent because Cubans generally don't get around in cars. They get around on bicycles, or they walk, or they take taxis, or as you'll see, they take horse-drawn carriages. And that's how they get around, and they have a lot of respect for cyclists. Bicycle Breeze as a company is the one that is the tour operator, and the company's been around for over 20 years. It's led by Peter Marshall and his wife Anna. They live in Havana, and Peter's from Canada, and Anna is a Cuban. And the company itself has just tremendous experience. They typically are running 10 or 12 tours each year. And as I said, they've done that for a long time. The tours are meant to be relaxing and enjoyable and for all abilities. One of the things that attracts Beth and I to Bicycle Breeze as a tour operator is their support for Cuban youth. So in the photo in the background of the picture, that's a picture of Peter Marshall and the cycling coach for the Las Tunas Cycling Club, and some of the young women that rode with that cycling club. In that photo, we're just presenting some donations that Bicycle Breeze and the clients bring to Cuba each tour. Peter and the company provide jerseys for the cycling clubs, and we encourage but don't require people to bring donations, which the most popular things to receive in Cuba are new or used road tires, so 200 by 23 or 200 by 25 millimeter tires. As you'll see in Cuba, there's no bike shops as we know them, and the youth cycling clubs, which operate out of the school system in Cuba, are totally dependent on donations in order to participate in cycling. Just quickly show some video footage, just in case you're curious what it looks like to cycle in Cuba. There's my friend Warren and Elizabeth cycling along a fairly typical rural highway. This is further down the road. There's a horse-drawn carriage being pulled and making our way down the road. This is another road heading out of El Cobre. This is more of a tar and chip road, so it's very common where I live in Canada. Here we are passing some sugar cane on a cart being drawn by oxen. Skip ahead a bit. This is some footage of a village of Pilon in southern Cuba, and that's the local bus station. As you see, people at the main square of the town gathering around. Everyone's very social in Cuba, and you're not seeing any cars here, but lots of bicycles and pedestrians. Here's a fellow cycling along, and I'll just leave it to the next little bit where you see a horse-drawn cart. That's actually a taxi, and it runs a designated route around Pilon all day long, and that's again how people get around. Here's my wife Beth, and this is a very rough road, so I want to show you what some of the rougher roads look like. This is pretty rare. It's really not very common for it to be that rough, but it can be. And this is further down that road where the asphalt's good, and this is the only place in Cuba that I know that they've got the edge of the road's actually been taken away by storms, and Cuba is not able to repair these roads, so it remains like that today. And here we're just a little further down the road, and Beth is just cycling through some cattle, and there's some goats and sheep there. And often in rural Cuba, you'll see animals grazing on the side of the road, and they're used to cyclists, so it's no problem riding past them. Okay, let's end that video and jump into the first of the two tours I want to present very briefly. This one's known as Fat Mary. Fat Mary is the English for Maria La Gorda. Maria La Gorda is a fishing town at the far western end of Cuba. And this tour takes us through Havana and some low mountains and the tobacco growing lands of western Cuba. The tour bus, here it is as we were leaving Hibacoa, riding along the Via Blanca. This tour bus follows us all day long, every day. It stays behind the last rider, and the rest of the cyclists are just making their way down the road in front. We like to stop every 10 or 15 kilometers, maybe 20 kilometers, and regroup and just make sure everyone's together and comfortable. That bus provides water, bottled water to give out to clients, and we bring snacks on the bus as available. During this tour, we'll go to Bellamar Caves in Matanzas. It's a very famous set of caves and one of the oldest tourist destinations in Cuba. We move on cycling into Havana and visit the Havana Velodrome. It's an outdoor concrete velodrome, and we'll meet the youth cycling club there. While we're in Havana, we spend a day there, and we'll do a vintage car ride along the Malecon. And we'll have a walking tour, including Havana Vieja, the old town, typical scene there for the tourists. After we leave Havana, we go to Punta Brava, which is just on the west side of Havana. And we'll meet a small youth cycling club there, formerly run by Coach Nico, who unfortunately this summer passed away not that long after we saw him in the winter of 2022. We stay at a very rustic wooden hotel in the mountains at Mil Cumbres. This is the most rustic and the only rustic place we stay at. We keep this in the tour just because it's so beautiful to be up in the mountains in sort of a cottage setting with some local Cubans who just really appreciate having tourists come around, and they'll show us a great time. We'll go to Cayo La Vitza, where we can have a beach lunch and spend a bit of time on the beach during our cycling day. And then we cycle into the Vinales Valley, and spectacular countryside here with the Magotes, which are these low limestone formations, sort of look like mountains, but you sort of more or less ride between them. Just spectacular scenery. We'll have dinner at an eco farm in Vinales. So again, you see the low mountains in the background, and they're growing the vegetables also in the closer background, which are served. They're served as part of the organic dinner that we'll have in Vinales. This is one of the hotels that we often stay at in the Los Organos mountain range, again, part of Vinales. Another beach day at Cayo. This is a shot from last year. In the foreground is one of our bike tour guides, Carlos Martinez, a wonderful man, and our tour group enjoying lunch before we have a swim in the beach. We'll have a walking tour of the Vinales Valley and see the countryside. This is on the edge of the tobacco growing region where cigar tobacco is grown, and we'll see tobacco rolled and cigars made, have the chance to buy them and chat with farmers. Finally, cycle our way into Maria La Gorda, the western tip of Cuba, And there's just the beautiful beach. This is an internationally famous dive spot. So really the only people that go there apart from us are divers who take boats out to do scuba diving. We want to spend an extra day at Maria La Gorda because it was such a good day this year. There's also snorkeling where you can swim to a reef just off that beach. We'll stay at the end of the trip. We take the bus back to Veradero where we began. So it's a loop where the return journey to Veradero, that's the Starfish Hotel in Veradero where we often stay. It's a beautiful spot right in the town of Veradero where we can cross the street to markets and restaurants and bars. We'll have a final dinner at the Xanadu Mansion. And this was formerly the DuPont Mansion. The DuPont family of petrochemical fame built this around 100 years ago. And now it's owned by the Cuban government. It's a spectacular spot for a dinner. So switching gears, the second tour that we're going to talk about is Cayo y Seis Ciudades. And it's running February 11 to 25th. And this is a central Cuba tour. So it begins and ends in Havana. It focuses on the beaches, the Cayos, and 6 historical towns from the colonial past of Cuba. We'll arrive, as I said, in Havana. And it's just another photo of the vintage cars. This is an interior shot of the tour bus that we typically set up. So we have the clients in comfortable seats on the one side of the bus, and we store the bikes on the right side of the bus. This enables us to move from, if we have a long distance to cover between 2 points, we might start in the bus, drive to the beginning point, and then unload the bikes and ride. Also, if anyone has had enough during the day and they don't want to cycle any further, they can hop on the bus and strap the bike in there and keep going. So the bus is one of the things that makes our tours really special. We'll head down to the Bay of Pigs invasion site at Playa Iran and see the museum. Move on to Cienfuegos, another one of the colonial cities, famous as being a place initially settled by people from France. On to Trinidad, known as the Pearl of the South. And this town has some of the most spectacular architecture in Cuba. And we'll have the opportunity to walk around town and experience Trinidad. After that, we'll cycle into the Escambray Mountains and stay at a hotel on Lake Hanabania. Beautiful spot to stay. We cycle into the mountains, but they're fairly low ones. And while we're there, we'll be there for a full day, and we'll do a hike in the mountains and take a boat across the lake to a lunch spot. We move on to Santa Clara, which is the site of Che's final battle, where he stopped a train, an armored train, and effectively ended the Revolutionary War. It's a beautiful city as well, with lots of historical meaning. And because we have a Cuban cultural tour guide with us, he can explain all the intricacies of what we're seeing and experiencing. We move on to Remedios, another charming town, this one on the north coast of Cuba. We spend one extra day at Cayo Santa Maria at an all-inclusive beach resort and have a bit of a relaxation mid-tour. This is Matanzas, so we're heading now back through the Veradero Matanzas area. This is the Park La Libertad in Matanzas's main square. Just a gorgeous spot, and the hotel we stay at is right on that square. And then we have a final day in Havana before everyone departs. So just to summarize those tours, typical daily cycling distances are 25 to 100 kilometers. And we're generally cycling about 10 days of the 15 the tour lasts. Just to go over the terrain, we're generally on quiet roads. There can be some city cycling, and for example, we will ride into Havana, so that's a big city. Um, because of the cycling effort, we do recommend that people have a reasonable level of cycling fitness, but it certainly doesn't require a high level of cycling fitness. As you saw in the road surfaces, they can be variable, and we recommend tires of 28 millimeters or wider. Hybrid bikes are the most common bike that we use, but gravel bikes, cyclocross, and touring bikes all work really well. My personal bike is a cyclocross bike with 35 millimeter tires, and my wife rides a mountain bike that's been converted into something closer to a hybrid with 1.5-inch wide tires, and both of those bikes work really well for us. Bike rentals are available for a fee, and that includes all those types of bikes I described. And the price for the rentals from Bicycle Breeze is I think generally between $15 and $25 per day for the days that you're cycling. So it's only the cycling days. And there is a bike mechanic as part of the crew. So the bike mechanic will help you set up your bike or set up the rental. As I say, our tours are fully supported, and they're not as inexpensive as other options, which would be, going to Cuba and staying at a hotel and riding out from it each day, or doing an unsupported tour. But what we do have instead is the opportunity to cover large parts of the country. Collectively, we'll do in the order of 1,500 kilometers between the cycle and the bus ride. So you see a lot of the countryside, and you get a better experience and more immersive because you're there with a Cuban cultural tour guide. Myself, for example, as a tour leader, bike mechanic, and the bus driver. And you'll find that as a group, we all get to know each other, and the Cuban cultural tour guide in particular will be very forthcoming of what it's like to live in Cuba, what his life is like, and how, the challenges they face and how they deal with them. The tour prices include all of the accommodations and most meals. Mostly in terms of meals, the ones that aren't included are lunches, and that's just because we're cycling usually during the day, and we'll find whatever types of food we want along the way during the day. Sometimes we'll pack a sack lunch with us from the hotel before we leave in the morning, and sometimes we'll eat at a restaurant or a paladar during the bike ride day. Airfare is not included because people fly from all over the world to do our tours. Most often, people come from Canada and the United States, but we often have cyclists from Europe as well. And the prices are listed there. So we're in the range of $2,700 to $2,950 per person on double occupancy. The prices are in US dollars because Cuba uses US dollars for all of their tourism trade, for the reason of just the currency stability. So thank you. I'll end the formal presentation at this point, and we'll have the chance now for everyone to have a Q&A session. And my wife will probably speak up and have a few things to add, but we'd love to hear from anyone else and take any questions you have, and we'll do our best to answer them. Just to let you know, there's my home phone number, my email address. Feel free to shoot me a message, and if you send me your email, I can add you to my quarterly newsletter blast. You may also want to see our Facebook page, the Celia Sanchez Bicycle Breeze Cuba Bike Tour page on Facebook, which is full of information and photos and videos. And I also have a YouTube channel if you search for my name in YouTube. So I'll stop the sharing here, or at least make sure I bring up, there we are, bring up the view of all the people that have called in. So thanks so much again for the presentation, and take questions now. Do a request to unmute. There we go. So Beth, is there anything that you want to add before, in case there's just to add your own perspective?
I think you covered just about everything.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Often people ask how the currency works in Cuba and how much money to bring. By and large, Cuba operates on their own national currency, the Cuban peso. They no longer have the thing many of us knew as the Cuban convertible peso, the CUC. That's not been in existence for a little over a year now. Generally recommend people bring Canadian dollars or euros, depending on where you're coming from. American dollars work okay, but Cubans are less likely to be keen to receive American dollars, because they can't deposit them in the bank. And what they do when they get American dollars is they'll exchange them with a friend who's going to travel to America and wants American hard currency. So it's a little harder for them if it's not in Canadian dollars or euros or a similar currency, but still possible.
Lee, can I ask you if COVID rears its ugly head again? You mentioned that the financial commitments for the Fat Mary tour were probably in November sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any circumstances under which the tour would be delayed or canceled?
I would think it would be highly unlikely that it would be canceled or delayed. We ran all of our tours successfully last winter during COVID with really no hiccups. Last year during COVID, the main problem we had to deal with was people needing a PCR test and a negative COVID PCR test result to return home. And that was the thing that weighed on people's mind the most. But Canada no longer requires any PCR testing to return home. And Cuba doesn't require any PCR or other COVID testing to come down there. So I think the likelihood is really good. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID because it keeps changing and coming along, but I think we've mostly fallen into the phase of learning to live with it. In Cuba itself, COVID really is a non-issue right now. It's just a bit surprising because we're seeing COVID popping up in Europe and North America, but in Cuba, I think it's about 92% of Cubans, including children over the age of 2, are vaccinated. And they have a very strict protocol that if someone has COVID, they have to be kept apart, so isolated. So if anyone on the tour became sick and needed to be cared for, they would have to be put into isolation at a hotel. We haven't had that happen, and it's been very rare in Cuba tourism experience over the last 18 months, but that's a possibility. The other part of your question was really about the financial commitment, and we strongly recommend that people get trip cancellation, trip interruption, and absolutely medical insurance for travel to Cuba.
Is there a proof of vaccination required for Cuba?
No, they have actually dropped the vaccination requirement for travel to Cuba. However, Bicycle Breeze requires that clients are vaccinated.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, COVID has certainly been the challenge for the last 2.5 years. So I'm afraid it's going to be with us for a long time.
Yeah, so it seems.
I think so. I wish it weren't. Steve, did you have any questions or comments that you wanted to add? And it's okay if you don't.
No, I'm just thinking, as far as language goes, it's all Spanish, but on the tour and everybody on the tour is speaking English. Do you have issues with people who, well, a foreign language, like if you go into a restaurant or something, or what's the requirement for speaking Spanish, or is there?
Okay, yeah, fantastic question. Well, first of all, it's another advantage of a fully supported tour. You'll be with me and my wife, the Cuban staff, and other clients. So if we're in a small town, chances are people won't speak English. I mean, not in general. So the tour company, the staff, and everyone can help you navigate in terms of ordering meals and checking into the hotel. When we're in Havana and Veradero, places like that, you'll find that probably most people, like more than half, speak English. So it's less of a problem in those areas, but the support from the tour company would help you, and you'd have absolutely, I can assure you, no trouble in terms of the basics of getting foods, getting to hotel, asking questions, all of that. You'll have that support from the company.
Okay. And so you do have a certain amount of, shall we say, at leisure time to just do like free days. The tours are like 14 days long, and it's basically 10 days of riding.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and so what does happen if you fall behind on the tour? Like, how I've never ridden 100 kilometers in my life in a day.
I can tell you, you don't fall behind. The bus stays behind the slowest person.
Yeah.
Okay. And how slow is the slowest person usually going?
It's pretty slow. Then you can get on the bus if you get too tired and ride for a bit, and then get off if you decide you have energy back again.
The way that the day goes when we're cycling is we'll get up and have breakfast. I usually do a briefing in the morning on a cycling day, and I pull out the map that we're going to follow, describe sort of where our final destination is, where we're going to stop for lunch, and go over the opportunities to get water and snacks during the day. And then we hop on our bikes, usually around 9 o'clock. And ride for a few hours, have lunch, and then either we're there or we ride for another hour or two. And as Beth said, nobody gets left behind. The typically the people just ahead of the bus will be going something like 10 miles an hour or 15 kilometers an hour. Some people are more comfortable rolling along at more like 25 or 30 kilometers an hour, so they'll ride off a little bit ahead, which is fine. And then we regroup every 10, 20 kilometers, and make sure everyone's together, have some water, have some snacks. I like to buy fruit at the fruit stands on the side of the road, keep them on the bus, and then like a fruit snack in the middle of the ride. So as I say, it works for everyone because we can have people shoot off down the road. I'll usually try and keep up with them and keep them in sight and know where they are, and the bus and the bike mechanic stay with the very last rider. So no one's left behind and everyone gets to do their own pace. And if after 30, 40, 50 kilometers, whatever, you've had enough cycling for the day, you can just hop on the bus, it's air conditioned, and just chill.
And there's lots of time to take pictures, stop and take pictures and sightsee.
Yeah.
And often time to sort of look around and say, where can you buy some beer for the next stop?
It's true. Finding a grocery store that has beer in stock has become sort of the thing that we spend a bit of time on. It's not always available, but we like to keep a case of beer on the bus, and there's a refrigerator by the bus driver. And yeah, that's one of our favorite things. And it's been a bit more challenging in the last 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
And I think you sort of asked, I don't think we answered the question about what else we do, but just, because there's sort of 4 days where it's not on the bike, we usually fill those with walking tours in towns like Havana, or walking in the mountains, or, other things to explore the countryside and the people.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what else to ask. I'd love to do it. I don't there's a bunch of reasons that I don't think it will happen this year. But I would love to do it.
No, that's fine. I have several hundred people that I'm in contact with, either through Facebook or email or Instagram or through the
Right.
YouTube channel. And, everyone's got their own circumstances, having time, having the opportunity, other commitments, they're all reasons why it doesn't work in a particular year. And that's totally all right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but the two tours that I highlighted, those are the ones Beth and I are leading this winter. We do have enough riders now to meet the minimum, so the rides are considered a go, and that's why we're just about to start seeking deposits from people. But we'd love to take more people. Cuba really needs the tourism dollars and the staff that work for Bicycle Breeze, the bus driver, the bike mechanic, the tour guide. They're so dependent on having the tourists come down there. It's been tough for tourism all around the world for a few years. And the bicycle donations are part that, that's a personal level of mine, because I love fixing bikes and I love fixing up parts and I love taking them down and giving it out. And most of our clients will also take, clothing, and in recent years, medical supplies. People often will take, several bottles of like acetaminophen or other, commonly available drugs in North America or Europe that really aren't available in Cuba at the moment for the local people. Are there any further questions or comments? Because we're just running close to the end of the time, and I don't want to leave anything undone.
What is the approximate airfare to get down from close to where you are?
Yeah, we're near Toronto. So currently the airfares from Toronto to Veradero are in the vicinity of $600 or $700 plus baggage, but that includes taxes. Air Canada's being a bit of a jerk, and they're charging around $1,200 to fly into Havana right now. So we're considering, we'll make the option available for clients if they want to fly into Veradero for $600 or $700. It's going to be in the vicinity of $50 to $100 per person to transfer them from Veradero to Havana. It's about a 2.5-hour bus ride. So we can work with either Veradero or Havana as a destination. Several people have pointed out that they want to go down a few days or a week or two before the tour, do the tour, and then perhaps even stay for a few days after. And all of those things are possible. We can help in terms of accommodation and transfers to the hotel, to the airport.
Okay. Thank you. I guess it's by the time you add the price of the tour plus the price of renting a bike and the price of a flight, you're going to be talking, and that's in US dollars. So you're still going to be talking probably over 4,000 Canadian dollars.
That's true.
4,500, close to 5,000. Okay.
Yeah. In terms of the bike rentals, I'm not sure, but that might be in Canadian dollars because Peter does that. They're actually Peter's bikes, but
Okay.
the Cuban government is actually very involved in the tourism industry. So, for example, the Cuban cultural tour guide's a Cuban government worker, and the hotels require the payment like internationally in American dollars. They just convert it into Canadian.
Okay.
So that's why it's all in American. Hotel costs, we're finding, for example, for people that want to stay in Veradero, are in the vicinity of $120 to $200 per room per night for two people. When we stay in Havana, we stay at a thing called Casa Particular, which is bed and breakfast, a Cuban word for bed and breakfast. And
Okay.
they're usually around $60 to $80 a night. And that's staying in someone's house.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I think with that, I'll say good night to everyone and thank you all so much for joining us. And, if we don't see you this winter in Cuba, I hope we see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.